In the last few videos, we have discussed a plethora of reasons as to why the Chinese will struggle to make it in the US. In this one, we'll discuss what might happen if China did indeed, by some magic, make it into the US. Well, Tesla will still be continually ramping up, and every car Tesla make will be sold, even with a significant amount more ramping, perhaps 10 to 20 times the run rate that they're at today. Q3 was only around 100,000 in the US, and that likely includes Canada too. Yeah, don't forget about Canada. It's a very easy market for Tesla, and as Tesla continue to ramp up, they'll be eating up ICE cars' market share, but when they're finished, then they'll be eating up the other EVs' market share. If by some miracle the Chinese EVs had established themselves some market share in the US, then Tesla will eventually eat up what market share they had. Legacy autos will likely be eating up the Chinese market share within time too, perhaps up to 2 million a year by 2025. Well, at least if Legacy are as ambitious as they say, then the possibility of robotaxis too, for a lower cost alternative of EV transportation. In other words, if they do enter the US market, it would be short-lived, and doubtful they could make any profit doing it too. In fact, a move as big as this would put a lot of pressure on any of them, and would highly likely go out of business. Of course, the entire Chinese economy does run a chance of going under too. We've already seen a few cracks showing as it is. Command economies do not work. We've seen this many times before. They start off with great growth, but eventually it comes to a halt and they can't out-innovate free markets. You see, EVs are not your typical industry, as there is a huge delay in how long it takes to ramp up battery supply. So although the Chinese might be some of the manufacturers to market first, and as a result have a larger market share in the global EV industry, well, the Chinese EVs are possibly just a necessary substitute until Tesla has ramped up enough, or even some of the legacy brands, or other EV startups, possibly even Rivian or Lucid. Part of the reason why Rivian had a higher market valuation than BYD already. It's just there are not enough Teslas to go around, but no one is moving as fast as Tesla. Sure, you can say some companies have had a higher percentage of growth than Tesla as of recent, but let's face it, it's obviously a lot easier to grow by percent when you're significantly smaller. If we go by actual numbers, then Tesla is still growing faster. But don't forget, Tesla have been waiting for their new factories and in-house batteries, which are nearly sorted. Then we will see just how fast Tesla can really grow. We have vehicles like Tesla Cybertruck coming out, possibly selling 1 million of these a year within time. The Chinese do not have a pickup truck. There's also Lucid and Rivian, in addition to the legacy auto EVs, all of which are offering suitable performance and range for the US market at a lower price point than the Chinese could compete. Which, I say again, why would the Chinese risk putting so much pressure on their companies when there are easier untapped markets for them? I mean, Asia alone, well, there are a lot of people there, and it doesn't require shipping vehicles across the world's largest ocean. There'll be fewer barriers to entry, or protectionism, and Tesla is not present in some of these markets. The Chinese are going to struggle in any market Tesla is present, and due to significantly lower production numbers the Chinese have, they will simply be spreading themselves too thin and miss out on more economies of scale. We see some of them cropping up in Norway. Norway offers incentives for its EVs, and it does not have a local car industry. It's also not part of the EU. It also happens to be one of the richest countries in the world per capita. Norway is not your average country. It might be a market that some Chinese brands can enter. It's a reasonably small population though, and Tesla already dominates there. I remember when I was there 4 years ago and seeing 3 Model S's in a row at the traffic lights. However, Berlin is quite close to Norway, at least closer than Shanghai is, so when the Giga Berlin factory is operational, it might be a different story altogether again. Oh right, all the alleged success the Chinese are having right now is before Tesla have these new factories and their own batteries. It will be interesting to see what chance China has in the EU, where there is a big auto manufacturing industry, and they'll use protectionism to stop the Chinese, just like America did. Of course, Teslas are locally made, so Tesla benefit from all subsidies too. Well, not 100% of all subsidies if Biden gets his way. The Chinese would not be able to set up locally, as their advantage is China. With the vast manufacturing resources available to them, it won't be the same overseas, and cheaper labour costs on top of that. But perhaps Australia could be a market for them, as Australia no longer has an auto business, along with South America and Asia, although they are ideal markets for robotaxis. So again, any market share they tap as the low-cost EV might also be eventually eaten up by robotaxis. It's almost as if Elon has planned all this ahead and thought it through or something. Alright, back to the US. Tesla has also created a Model Y standard range that can work on LFP batteries. LFP batteries are not so battery constrained. Tesla can make a standard range Model Y at Texas and crank them out. Literally what we are seeing occur in Shanghai right now. This is the main reason Tesla have stepped up their production in Shanghai. They're using LFP batteries. CATL has plans to expand their LFP production to something crazy, and eventually Tesla will have their own LFP batteries that will be next level again. As I keep saying, Tesla's LFP batteries will transform the EV industry, and the announcement is the most underrated thing we've heard about the company to date. I'm expecting Tesla to create a Model Y with 300 miles of range with LFP batteries. I think that is the sweet spot for an EV in every aspect: cost, range, performance, and handling. The fact Tesla will have such cheap batteries that can be produced at such high volume and still deliver a great range means they just get to dominate everywhere. If sales start to drop, they can drop the price, especially when they're at over 40% margins or higher. We haven't even mentioned FSD, which, provided you're not a moron that works for CNN, if you saw their latest review, then it's outstanding already. But as we saw in AI Day, it has so much further yet to come. No one is close to even being close on this level of FSD. Most of the Chinese cars don't even have anything as good as Ford's dreadful Blue Cruise, which, just to remind you, struggles on gentle curves around a highway. It can only go in straight lines. It's not even funny, or maybe it is a little. I think GM's about the same level too, although Mary Barra says she wouldn't swap their autonomous tech for anyone else's. But Tesla doesn't exist though, as she can't even say the name or acknowledge it, same as the US government. No such thing. But this climate change sure is bad, they say, despite the one company doing more for it than anyone else that they don't want to acknowledge or help. Tesla's creative destruction is exposing all the corruption. It's obvious as day. These people disgust me. Well, what if the CCP gets cross about all the protectionism and nationalizes Teslas and legacy autos manufacturing plants? Well, if that is how the Chinese are behaving, then surely that would put off and scare anyone manufacturing in China. It would kill the already fractured economy. Battery prices will hopefully come down, although they are all fighting over the same scarce resources like nickel and lithium. Sure, there is plenty of lithium in the world, but it can take about 8 years or so for a mine to ramp up. I would have thought that Tesla saw this coming and have secured all their supply chains well ahead due to such a massive first mover advantage. But this would really only be the price of nickel batteries reducing, perhaps using some of Tesla's 4680 chemistry or manufacturing techniques, and the legacy autos aim to get down to $100 per kilowatt hour. On the other hand, currently it might be cobalt that's the biggest problem, as their new chemistry still requires economically unstable element cobalt. Really, this business is tough for every EV manufacturer. Their path to success is just so much harder than Tesla's. Okay, well the bottom line is, I don't think we will see a similar wave of Chinese autos like we did see with Japan. Consumers had no option back then. They had to buy a car that was cheaper to run. Consumers will have options this time. Aside from Tesla, they can also buy plug-in hybrids. Remember, they will have the battery plug-in option and can run on no fossil fuels too, or a minimal amount. Added to that, an eventual ubiquitous charging network with a $7.5 billion budget from the government and the huge rebates plug-in hybrids will receive in the US. But it is a massive barrier to entry for the Chinese EVs to come to America in a big wave, with companies that do not have the huge amounts of funding like Legacy Autos or even Rivian. But please do comment and tell me how they can get around this, and try and avoid vague suggestions as to just the CCP will make it happen, but tell me how they will. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.